TJ Maxx. Over 10,000 brand name summer fashions arrive at TJ Maxx every week, so it's never the same place twice.
No, it's never, ever the same place twice.
Yesterday,
next week, next Saturday night,
you get the
Max for the minimum price.
and it's
Never, ever the same
place
It's the TJ Maxx.
Convention coverage starts today at 5 on Channel 4.
From the White House to Whitewater, the man from Plains comes north to Minnesota.
When most of us think of Jimmy Carter, we think of him as president or perhaps peanut farmer. Some of us may even think of him as an author, but few of us are likely to think of him as a fisherman. We'll throw him some lines and see if he bites. We'll also try to throw him for a loop when we unveil one of our famous Newsday mystery guests, and that's next on Newsday.
From WCCO Television, a new kind of news program, Newsday, with Marcia and Dave Nimmer.
Good afternoon, everyone. Jimmy Carter may have had his fill of politics, but he will never have his fill of trout fishing.
The former president has always been more comfortable in camouflage than a cummerbund, waders than a tuxedo. And while he was president, his love of the outdoors took second place to the affairs of state. But now his summit's folks are with Mother Nature rather than the heads of state.
We'll talk to him about his life, his politics, and his new book today on Newsday.
And we'll also salute the last day of school with a look at why more and more children, heaven forbid, prefer television to reading. Naturally, we're flattered, but some experts are concerned that kids of today will have trouble as the adults of tomorrow unless more reading is encouraged. Before we get to that story, or get to the former president, we'll get to today's news headlines with Don Shelby. Donald?
Thanks, Dave. Good afternoon, everyone. An Andy Warhol painting was stolen from the University of Minnesota's Wilson Library, and authorities think the theft occurred within the last 24 hours. The painting, entitled Marilyn, is worth $23,000. It measured 36 by 36 inches. A Ramsey, Minnesota man was killed today when a car he was driving collided with a car in Brooklyn Park. 23-year-old Jeffrey Zaw was pronounced dead on the scene. Two Maple Grove teenagers were taken to North Memorial Medical Center, both listed in serious condition. A Minneapolis company, Michael Foods, has cornered the rights to technologies that could remove as much as 90% of cholesterol from egg yolk. The process would also give them a 2-month shelf life. Most interested customers so far have been fast food chains. We'll have more news coming up on the 5 p.m. report in just about a half an hour.
Thank you, Don. Well, people were lining up for Jimmy Carter today.
Marcia, not to vote Democratic, but to buy his book. And we'll talk to the man about his passion for politics and trout fishing and the outdoors. That's next on Newsday.
Introducing Kodacolor Gold 100.
I see your true colors shining through. See your true colors shining through.
Kodacolor Gold 100 gives you the most accurate colors, the truest colors of any print film.
So don't be afraid to let them show
A new Kodacolor Gold.
your true color.
I must own a half-dozen pair of boots, but these are the ones I use. You can tell by looking at them. Just like even though I've got other yellow pages around the house, this is the one at the top of the pile. US West Direct. It stays on top because I can find everything I need right here. US West Direct is the one I use. You can tell by looking at it.
US West Direct, the one that gets used.
Did you hear the news? At last, April Freshness is in a dryer sheet, introducing new Downy sheets, and their biggest fan is Bernard.
Whoa, Katie, your blanket needs April Freshness. Downy sheets make everything April Fresh. Katie, see how April Fresh my stuff is? You said it. Your blanket's history.
They're here, new Downy dryer sheets for April Freshness from your dryer.
Dad will love the gifts you get him during Burlington Coat Factory's Father's Day sale. Right now, his favorite famous labels are a tremendous savings. Levi's pleated officer corps pants, $15.90. Famous label cotton sweaters, only $16.90. Pure cotton pinpoint Oxford dress shirts, $19.90. Pure silk designer ties, $8.75. And Levi's knit shirts, just $9.90, plus much, much more. Burlington Coat Factory's fabulous Father's Day sale. And you thought they only sold coats.
Shopping traffic stood still at City Center in Minneapolis today, where former President Jimmy Carter was autographing his new book, An Outdoor Journal. Hundreds of folks lined up for Carter's John Henry, or just to get a glimpse of the man from Plains.
This is the fourth book Jimmy Carter has written, the first that has nothing whatsoever to do with politics, and it just may be his most important. Mr. President, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Dave. Good to see you.
And I've always figured that a man or a woman, time spent fishing, is time most importantly spent, and lessons come to us all while in a boat or wading the stream. And I'm wondering whether you could give us maybe a lesson or two that we might learn while fishing.
Well, I think that every human being likes to have some things in life that don't change. You know, if you're a philosopher or if you're dedicated to a religious belief, you know, truth, honesty, compassion, concern, love, service. Also, and almost equal to that, is the appreciation of beauty, self-contemplation, self-analysis, deep thought, refreshing memories, the awareness of God's creation, a responsibility of human beings to preserve nature as it is meant to be in some areas, relationship to other human beings, how to use effectively solitude, how to meet a challenge of a wilderness experience with courage and conviction, but with respect for the wild animals and birds and fish who live there. These are the kind of things that can be very beneficial in a psychological way, in addition to just actual fun, you know.
I told you about the spirituality part, didn't I?
Yeah, but I've never had much fun. Well, I don't catch much going out with him. Who's your favorite fishing partner?
My wife.
Is that right?
But the only problem with Rosen as a fishing partner is that she catches more fish than I do.
What about the
She's excellent.
What about the vice president? You did have one more fisherman in the White House in those days, Walter Mondale. I wonder, have you ever had a chance? Have you had a chance first to see him or to fish with him lately?
No, I haven't seen Fritz in a long time. I've been trying to call him today, but he's been busy, and I really hate to miss him in Minneapolis, but I'll call him later on.
I wish you'd get a chance to be able to see him, Mr.
Well, it would be a
President.
pleasure if I could, but too bad.
We thought so, too.
Well, how you doing, man?
Could you autograph this book?
I thought you were in school. Well, I don't know. I'll autograph it to John. How you doing?
Good.
I've been trying all day to get hold of you.
I know it. I've been ducking all day.
But it was honest. He really did make plans so that he wouldn't lie to you when you tried to get hold of him. Now, tell us tell him what you told us, Fritz, the truth about his fishing.
I haven't had a chance to read this yet.
You've really missed something so far.
To a former friend, did you say?
No, to a great friend.
But I always read all books by going directly to back here to the index, and I see under the MONs you've got monarch butterflies and monasteries.
That's right.
Do you think you may have forgotten something?
I didn't forget, because I remember very distinctly when you and I were in the White House, and I had to stay there and sweat.
Yeah.
With Menachem Begin and Omar Torrijos and Deng Xiaoping. And I would ask, where's Fritz? They said, well, he's in Minnesota working with his constituents. I found out that most of your constituents are in the Upper Lakes region where the fish are biting.
I figured I was entitled to that because you always gave me Imelda Marcos when she came to town.
Well, did you two, why didn't you fish together more now? You came down to Plains, didn't you?
Well, this is, I'm taking your time. I realize you're selling a book.
No.
My law firm is Dorsey and Whitney.
They aren't listed in here either.
No, look under D. Maybe.
No, they aren't. No.
But
the feed is here, though.
When I first came to Plains in the summer of '76,
I remember that.
He showed me around town, and it was about the same size as Salon, Minnesota, where I was born, about 400, maybe stretching 401. And he showed me where they fish, which is a kind of a, Would mudhole be a criticism?
No, of course not. No,
He said, well, wonderful. And then what they did, they would net carp, basically, and call it fishing. Because I wanted to be picked for vice president. I didn't say a word at the time. But
if I had heard this, you would not have been vice president.
No, but it was wonderful fishing out here. And I kept talking about Minnesota and real fishing, and I'm glad.
Well, someday I hope to fish with Fritz, to give him a few pointers, teach him the techniques.
You are different kinds of fishermen.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. You're the aesthetic fisherman with the vest and the hat and the fly rod, and he's strictly minnow pail and worm bucket.
Yeah, well,
how would you two get along?
Well, he fishes with leeches, and I fish with flies. But that's still, there's still a lot in common. And I've always wanted to come up to Minnesota and fish with Fritz, and I hope that someday in the future we can fish together.
I have a story to tell.
It's hard for a vice president and president to leave Washington at the same time.
Can I tell a story, Fritz?
How about Fritz? Yeah,
I flew into town on Air Force One when he was vice president, brought in Senator Humphrey. And he said he figured he wanted to come back here and just drop it all because of his friend and go fishing, but he figured that he only needed to be in Washington 2 times. And that was when Jimmy was there and when Jimmy wasn't there. So I don't think he got a lot of fishing in either, Mr. President.
Mr. President, tell a story about losing that stringer brim and what your daddy told you. I always thought that was probably more fascinating.
My daddy was one of the strict disciplinarians. There was no fooling around with my father. He told you to do something, you did it. And he worked hard and expected everyone else to work hard. Well, one of the great things about my father was that in fishing and hunting, he let down the barriers between me and him, the generational barriers. And Daddy would go out fishing with a bunch of business associates. Generally 6 men and 1 little boy, that was I. And they had a hot competition about who would come back to camp every night with the most very large copperhead brim, we call them. We waded out in streams to fish, waist deep or so, and cast against the opposite bank. And one night Daddy had a prize string of fish. And he went down to lay some extra bets with his fishing partners, and he asked me to keep his fish stringer. So I tied it onto my belt loop, and I kept fishing. All of a sudden, I caught a very large brim, biggest one of the day, and I pulled that brim in. And when I got the brim in, I realized that my daddy's fish stringer was gone. My belt loop had broken, and the string was downstream. And I began furiously to dive underwater looking for that stringer, and I was crying. I knew my daddy was going to whip my tail. So after a while, Daddy came back and said, Jimmy, what are you doing swimming? You're supposed to be fishing. I said, Daddy, I lost you a string of fish. And Daddy said, come here. And I climbed out of the stream and went up to my daddy, and he put his arms around me and said, Hot? He called me Hot. He said, we'll catch some more fish tomorrow.
Oh,
and I almost wept with relief. And I think at that moment, it was the closest that my daddy and I ever were in his lifetime.
Mr. Vice President, when you started fishing, how old were you, and what do you like about the sport?
Well, I was maybe 6 or 7 when my dad first took me out. Sunfish is what we call kid fishing. Kids don't have any patience. You need something to keep you busy, and if you're in a mess of sunfish, bluegills, you can catch them. I think probably 6, maybe 5. I don't know.
Yeah, about the same thing. I think Fritz will find a lot in common with this. Most people who grew up with their daddy, on a farm, or who had a father who was acquainted with the outdoors, I think would find a lot of similarities in what I wrote about me and my daddy as a child.
Well, there's a lot of passion in what you do beyond just the fishing. You will try anything in the sporting area. You, I understand, have been lost.
Oh yeah, I've been lost several times.
Or thought you were.
I have been lost several times. It's one of the worst feelings in the world. And I've, put in here some of the, down home we have a lot of poisonous snakes, rattlesnakes in the dry areas of the woods and so forth, in the fields, and water moccasins in the streams. And we've had some pretty narrow escapes with these, but I try to sell the thing not in a tragic way, but in a humorous way that also will be helpful to the readers to avoid those dangers.
This isn't my question, Mr. President.
Go ahead.
The Vice President wanted to know. He said one story that he didn't see in the book was the story of the Mad Rabbit. And
you promised you wouldn't quote me.
I looked for it, and I said, now there's an outdoor story. What really happened?
The next book I write, I'm going to put that in the beginning of the book.
Well, share the story.
Okay, let me tell you what happened. I was fishing one day in one of our little farm ponds in a boat by myself with a fly rod. And all of a sudden, a little bunny rabbit came down out of the woods. The dogs were chasing him. Anyone who's an outdoorsman like you, they would know that all wild animals can swim well. Squirrels and rabbits and fox and so forth can swim well. Well, this little bunny rabbit jumped in the pond and swam across about 10 or 12 feet away from my boat and went off in the pond and got on the other side and ran away. Later, I told Jody Powell, my press secretary, that this rabbit swam near my boat. And Jody said, well, I didn't know rabbits could swim so well. I said, yeah, they can swim. So it must have been at least 6 or 8 months later in a tavern in Washington late at night, Jody was telling this story. I'm sure there was a slight exaggeration in his account. Anyway, the next day, the story broke all over the world that a killer rabid rabbit, a giant killer rabbit, had attacked the President of the United States. And the thing, it was the biggest story in the nation for a week. It was. I know, and I don't, you know, what do? Do you call an official press conference in the White House and announce?
Did you ever ask him about it?
I was in China at the time.
And it was just something you didn't ask, right? It was a big deal.
Well, they opened the session. Yeah, and Deng Xiaoping started laughing. So I knew we'd made an impression.
Well, I'm glad we could set the record straight.
Well,
because
I need to write a special story about that.
You do. You must. But I imagine you've thanked Jody a good many times for.
Yeah, that wasn't the only time I thanked Jody Powell.
If the two of you could share a boat, what would you want to talk about? Anything in particular?
Fritz, I'll let you answer first. Your home territory.
Well, let me just tell one story. I never thought that President Carter was as well known by the public as we knew him. I think I was treated better, with more dignity, every day and all the time than any vice president in history. And I'll just tell you one story, a true story, that I don't think I've ever told before. I had been to see Hubert, who was dying at the University Hospital. And he said, what are you doing this weekend? I said, I'm going up to Camp David with Joan. He said, have you been there? I said, yes. President Carter has told me whenever we want to go to Camp David, it's ours. And we have used it many times. And I said, you mean to tell me you've never been there? He said, I've never been to Camp David. So when I got home to the White House, I told President Carter that, picked up the phone and called Hubert, said, how about coming up with me when you get back to Washington, and let's go to Camp David together. And Hubert lived for that weekend, and the two of you went up there.
I came out here and picked him up.
He came out here personally, picked him up in Air Force, and flew him to Washington, chopped him. You know, the president has certain perquisites, most of which I've lost.
I've lost them all too.
Yeah. And he took Humphrey, and that meant so much to Hubert. That's the sort of the private side to a very remarkable man. I wish I could, Joan and I could cause the American people to see that very human side more than in politics. You really can't show that.
I think things like this might help. I find you both remarkable gentlemen.
Well,
good luck with your book.
We're not only partners in politics, but good friends.
Thank you very
much. And I'm delighted. This is a highlight of my whole trip to be with President.
Can I have my book back?
Oh, yes, you certainly may. This is autographed, Mr. Vice President.
Oh, well.
I was thinking of waiting for the movie, but I think I'll.
Here we go.
All your friends need copies too.
They were all there. They were all there. Yeah.
This is now the Jimmy Fred Show. It's somewhat embarrassing to follow an interview with an author, especially one that was president, with a story about kids who don't read anymore.
Well, folks, a recent study showed that children prefer television to books. Can you imagine that? We're going to ask them why, and that's next on Newsday.
Oh, what is it, Sergeant? Smoke signal? No, Captain. Smoked beef, turkey, probably bratwurst. Where? There, Cub Foods. You mean there's a smokehouse right in the store? Take a look. That's why they taste so darn good.
The Smokehouse at Cub Foods, right in the deli, where everything from Italian sausage to bratwurst is smoked daily.
What are your orders, Captain? Half a pound of turkey, half a dozen brat.
Italian sausage. Cub Foods, it's a new way to run a supermarket.
I started work right after I got my degree. Eventually, I put everything on hold and started a family. Ask my daughter what I do, and she'll say, Mom makes orange juice. That's not so easy. This is 100% pure juice. We don't add sugar. We don't add preservatives. We don't add anything. And that's what being Select is. It's not just some name on a box. I wouldn't let it be.
Kathy Brown makes Citrus Hill Select for your family and for hers. I'll bet I know why they made grape nut cereal so small.
So they could fit a lot in this little box.
They made it so small so there wouldn't be room for things you don't want.
Like a flat tire?
Not exactly, but try there's no room for added sugar.
Or preservatives.
Being all natural takes up all the room.
One might say that there is no room for improvement.
One might say that.
Post Grape Nut Cereal, the one and only.
Some theories say it's good for your child to always have a teddy bear. Helps build security. Other theories say don't let the child become too attached because she may end up marrying a teddy bear or someone fuzzy. What do you think? Now, theories come and theories go, but I say you give your child lots of love and some creamy Jell-O pudding. Now that's forever.
That's for Teddy.
J-E-L-L-O. This is a big day in the lives of our children, and we're starting to lock things up. For most of them, it's the last day of school.
And that brings a big question to mind, what to do for the summer. A recently published weekly reader poll found that kids like to do most, 81%, is watch television. And what they prefer to do the least, 52%, is read. In fact, the study showed that interest in reading declines with age. 65% of second graders surveyed like reading, while only 39% of sixth graders do, and that is disturbing.
Well, we did get some opinions from some second graders in Minnetonka, and they said, yes, indeed, they did prefer television. Joining us now to talk more about children, television, and reading is Jim Becker, Program Director for the Northeast Minneapolis YMCA. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Are kids watching TV more today, do you think? And for heaven's sakes, why?
I think definitely they are. A couple of reasons possibly why. One is that parents tend not to read to their children as much anymore. The other being that peer pressure says reading's not cool.
Jim, when you get a chance to talk to kids during the course of the summer, how do they tell you they feel about reading books, for instance, actually reading a book? What do they say?
Well, I think what they say is it's boring. It holds no interest for me. I'd rather read a comic book or go read Superman or...
When you say it's not cool, what does that mean? I mean, it's not cool to be caught reading a book, like it's not cool to be caught playing a violin?
That's exactly it. It's more acceptable for kids these days to know the latest things on every movie that's come out on a video, to be able to get the top score in a VCR video game, and just to read comic books and to trade them.
Kids are going to summer camp now.
Right.
During those periods of time, can you wean kids? Well, kids are weaned away from the idiot box, and can they be encouraged to say there's other things out there besides television? There are real things to look at. I can take a walk, I can go to the dock, I can go fishing.
The main goal of the YMCA is to definitely remove children away from the television set. We approach it in a manner that we try to show each kid that there's enough to do with yourself, and you're a special kid, and you can go in your own backyard and do this.
Do they believe that? Do they find
I think
that?
initially, no, they don't.
Do they suffer withdrawal? Television withdrawal? Do you see signs of that?
A little bit. They start out when they first arrive at camp mentioning, the latest movies, and by the time they leave, it's pretty much gone. They've really adjusted to the life that we've provided for them.
We've talked about the facts. Okay, we'll accept it now. You've told us it's true. But you made a statement to Kate Haviland when she talked to you, and you said it stunts their growth. TV stunts their growth. What do you mean, growth in what way?
Well, I think in
besides
two ways.
hunching over.
Right. 2 ways. One, I think if you look statistically nationwide, children from the ages of, and teenagers also, 6 to 17 tend to be the most unhealthy group in the country right now. Part of that being that they spend a lot of time doing sedentary activities like watching television.
Give me a couple of ways where parents could encourage kids to read. One is to read to them, obviously.
One is to read to them. The other is by example, I think. How many of us, and I know myself, I include myself in this, really take the time anymore to read? It's very difficult with everybody working and pressure on kids to start working earlier to influence reading that way.
One of the things that strikes me is every once in a while a kid could learn by watching Newsday, for instance. It's real life people write books. People like former presidents. Jim, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And if kids are going to watch TV, we'd like them to watch Newsday, of course.
Although from the tone of some of your calls, more than a few of you think our subject matter the last few days is unsuitable for children.
Really?
PG-13 or at least R. Calls are next.
When you experience the refreshment of an Alice's mint cream patty, you won't think you're standing under a rushing waterfall. You simply get a chocolate mint cookie that leaves a good, honest tingle on the tip of your tongue.
Alice's Mint Cream Patties, the refresh mint cookie from Salerno.
Did you ever wonder why people drink with their pinkies up? So they have a place to put their Salerno butter cookie.
Light and delicious, alone or as the perfect dunk. Salerno butter cookies, the reason pinkies were invented.
Between the hours of 7:45 a.m. Friday morning and 6 p.m. Monday evening, you can make the buy of a lifetime. At Coon Rapids Chrysler Plymouth, we took in more quality trade-ins during our Indy Street Party than we have room for. They must be sold now. So we've taken 150 of our best used cars, divided them into 6 groups, and slashed the prices. But listen, any that aren't sold by Monday evening will be offered at wholesale to other dealers. But before we offer them at wholesale, we want to offer them to you at reduced prices. Here's just 3 examples of the tremendous values you'll find. An 86 Plymouth Horizon, just $19.95. An 84 Chevy Celebrity, only $29.95. Even a luxurious 87 Chrysler Fifth Avenue for $99.95. This sale can only happen once. So if you're going to buy a used car anytime this year, don't miss what may be the biggest used car sale ever held in the Twin Cities area. Only till 6 p.m. Monday, and only at Coon Rapids Chrysler Plymouth.
The night that we had the big flood, we were, flipping stations trying to get information. When we listened to Mike Fairborn, it was just, straight and concise. We found out what we wanted to know. We felt that we were informed enough where we felt safe and we could take the right precautions. If the weather gets really bad and we have warnings and things, it feels good to turn on to a station that we trust and depend on. So we just flip the channel on Channel 4.
Mike Fairborn at Weather Center 4, keeping you ahead of the storm.
I have nothing to hide, Why should I be ashamed of anything? He confessed on TV, and I just decided to come out with my story.
Deborah Murphy posed in this month's Penthouse and talked about her relationship as a prostitute with Jimmy Swaggart. It was a kiss-and-tell tale about what actually helped bring down the downfall of the TV preacher.
Some of you thought we should have had more sympathy for her. Others said she had no place on television.
You should be ashamed at allowing your show to be used as a vehicle for free advertising for Penthouse magazine. We didn't see Ms. Murphy being available for news or talk show interviews until the current issue with her in it hit the stand.
I think it's great that Debbie came forth with her story to Penthouse. I, personally speaking, think Schweigert is a pervert, and I wouldn't let him near my daughter. Yes, it is a sin to be a prostitute. But listening to this woman, she has pulled herself up and tried to make her life better. I give her some credit, which you did not.
I don't think you should be airing people's sins in front of everybody on television. I think that's between God and man, and I don't think any of us, including Newsday, would like to have their private sins aired before the people.
Okay. You can call us about our sins. 330-2404. That's 330-2404. Our answering machines have thick skins. Today we had a surprise reunion with President Jimmy Carter and former Vice President Walter Mondale, and we talked about whether kids watch too much television.
Well, tomorrow we will look at the issue of black-on-black crime. It is a topic many people find difficult to talk about because of its obvious racial overtones. But murder is the leading cause of death for black men in their 20s, and there's a conference underway here to try to turn those figures around.
That's tomorrow. As for now, we'll turn you over to Pat Miles and Don Shelby with the 5 p.m. report.
Thank you both. Good show. Among the items coming up on today's edition of the 5 p.m. report, official Washington sharpens its focus on the war against drugs. Both the President and the Senate got in on the act today.
We will also introduce you to one of the medal winners as Minnesota's Special Olympics draw to a close in St. Paul today.
And we're going to get a closer look at 4 of the newest residents high atop downtown St. Paul. That's what they look like. We'll also go live to Rochester where the state's DFL convention is about to get underway. I'm Don Shelby.
And I'm Pat Miles. The 5 p.m. report is coming up next.
do. Going to Dayton's Daisy Sale, all for the love of you. It's the best sale of the summer. Not to go would be a bummer. So come on in, so come on in, so come on in, so come.
Dayton's Daisy Sale, open Friday till 10.
Dad will love the gifts you get him during Burlington Coat Factory's Father's Day sale. Right now, his favorite famous labels are a tremendous savings. Levi's pleated officer corps pants, $15.90. Famous label cotton sweaters, only $16.90. Pure cotton pinpoint Oxford dress shirts, $19.90. Pure silk designer ties, $8.75. And Levi's knit shirts, just $9.90, plus much, much more. Burlington Coat Factory's fabulous Father's Day sale. And you thought they only sold coats.
For 10 big days, all Water Bedroom Superstores are celebrating the grand opening of our newest showroom in West St. Paul.
Enjoy store-wide savings on all water beds.
Day beds and brass beds.
Plus, the Water Bedroom has the best selection of bedroom furniture to complement any water bed or inner spring mattress.
Like the Hickory Valley bedroom set for $7.99.
The Christine Day bed is sale price for $98.
Or the Madison, a genuine brass headboard, only $199.
Hurry! The Water Bedroom's company-wide grand opening sale ends soon.
Convention coverage starts today at 5 on Channel 4. Minnesota's 18th annual Special Olympics drew to a close in St. Paul today after attracting athletes from around the state. We'll introduce you to one of them, a silver medal winner, coming up.
WCCO Television presents